Call to order the Budget Committee meeting dated Thursday, November 21st, 2019 to order. Roll call, please, Kathy.
Yes, sir. Mr. Angelpont?
Here.
Vice Chairman Barris?
Here.
Mr. Collins was unable to attend this evening. Mr. Farnham?
Here.
Mr. Manzi was also unable to attend.
Walked in.
He did. Oh, he called and said he wouldn't be able to attend. All right, good deal. President Mayo?
Here.
And Chairman Brame?
Here.
You do have a quorum.
Thanks, Kathy.
You're welcome.
Okay, we'll go to item 3. Consideration of making.
Move on 3, all
recommendation
bullets.
With reference to approving requests from the following entities for grant funding from the gaming fund. A, Ward 2, $70,000, Community Center and Playground District Number 7 of Ward 2 for costs associated with the completion of the parking improvements at Hayes Park and installation of fencing at Bell City Ballpark. B, Ward 2, $13,375, Ward 2 Fire Protection District Number 1 for matching funds associated with the purchase of defibrillators and thermal imaging cameras. C, Ward 4, District 13, $7,500, Human Services Department for the Sulphur Housing Christmas Giving Program. D, Ward 4, $24,000, $12,000 from Ward 4 and $12,000 from Ward 4, District 13. Waterworks District Number 11 of Wards 4 and 7 for costs associated with the purchase of 3 new trucks. E, Ward 4, $15,100, West Calcasieu Airport, Southland Field for matching funds associated with the purchase of a new aircraft tug. F, Ward 4, District 15, $8,050, Gravity Drainage District Number 5, Ward 4 for matching funds associated with the purchase and installation of drainage pipe on Marge Street and Driftwood Drive. G, Ward 5, $43,460, Ward 5 Fire Protection District Number 1 for a cost associated with the purchase of firefighting equipment. H, Ward 6, $50,000, Ward 6 Fire Protection District Number 1 for the purchase of 1 UTV firefighting vehicle and skid unit. I, Ward 6, $90,000, Community Center and Playground District Number 1 of Ward 6 for costs associated with the purchase of installation of playground equipment and a splash pad. J, Ward 8, $3,700, Ward 8 Fire Protection District Number 1 for a cost associated with the purchase of firefighting equipment. I had a motion by Mr. Angelpont on all bullets and a second by President Mayo. Any discussion? Go ahead, Mr. Landry.
Maybe Ms. Buffkin might know the answer. On this Ward 2 gaming fund, is there any money left in that fund?
Yes, sir.
So there is some money left?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I just don't want to see a sitting juror spend every last penny in the fund for the incoming juror to be broke for a year. Because I'm sure that didn't happen 4 years ago.
Allocation January 1st.
Coming January. But there's still some left, isn't there? Hopefully that applies to all of these, because some of these are some very small districts that I know probably don't have very much money, to spend, I wouldn't think. But I guess if that's how they choose to spend it, that's fine.
Good.
I wouldn't spend it on that, but that's not my responsibility. I'm not in those districts.
Thank you, Mr.
We've been
Landry.
spending ours on water and
Yes, we
drainage
have.
for 20 years. Well, 15, sorry.
Any other discussion? Any objection? Hearing none, that motion will carry. That
Move to
item-
adjourn.
No, wait a minute.
I'm kidding.
Can I go get all that?
Okay, we'll go to item 4, administration presentation of the Paris proposed fiscal year 2020 budget. Mr. Bean.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to propose an anti-heckling ordinance. Seriously, it's a privilege. It always is to stand before you and the committee each year to present the proposed 2020 budget for the police jury. A lot of exciting things going on in this parish, and you're right in the middle of it. Before I get into the slides, I would like to take a moment just to say a few thank yous that are well deserved. Our finance division obviously leads this effort. Judy Hewlett is a key player in that, and she works tirelessly. Several other staff in administration, Dane Bolin, Alberto Galan, Jessica Booth. And I want to thank all the department heads, too, and their budgetary staff. They put in a lot of work. This all begins, believe it or not, in late August, which seems like forever ago. But it just takes that much time, but it's well prepared. And I certainly want to make sure everybody understands that Tammy Buffkin is the jewel of this whole thing. Your finances could not be in any better hands than Tammy's, and we're so glad to have her for that. So with that, let's get into the presentation. On the cover slide, we actually have a little change. You'll notice at the bottom, that is part of the police jury strategic plan, your core values you passed, vision, collaboration, dependability, and last but not least, financial stewardship. You deemed it so important to handle the public's finances in a good way that's one of your core values, and I think it was a great one to put in there. Outline is very similar. I like to go through the economic environment because that sets the tone for what resources we're able to have to provide public services. Obviously, a good economy or a bad, depending on the nature of it, will affect our tax revenues, which affects our service delivery. So we'll cover that first. Then we'll get into the numbers for 2020, revenues, expenditures, and then at the end, a little wrap up, a look ahead, talking about the implementation of our strategic plan. So let's start with the economic outlook. This is maybe a familiar slide. I certainly don't expect you to read all the small print. The Alliance Southwest provides this information. They update it every quarter. The key here is if you look at the bottom on the circled number, that's about $65 billion. A lot of projects in the petrochemical industry we know have completed. Cameron LNG, Lotte, Sasol, or are wrapping up soon, but many more are announced. They need final investment decision. We're very optimistic, though, on several of them. And so when you look at the number 65 billion, several of which could start as early as next year, we are maybe what you would call in between economic waves. The good news is it's been very strong. It will continue to be, and I've got a little more information just to kind of back that up. This is from the latest Workforce Commission at the state level that puts out all the employment and unemployment rate information. You'll see in the state for, I think, not sixth straight year, but for a long time, the Lake Charles MSA has the lowest unemployment rate in the state at 3.7, and that does count Calcasieu and Cameron parishes in it. This has been the case for a long time, and we're very lucky to have that. If you kind of flip that and say, well, okay, the unemployment rate is one thing, employment numbers, which means number of jobs, so you want that to be going up, that continues to do well also. This is from the annual Lawrence Scott report. He is the economist known all across the state that keeps up with Louisiana metros and the whole state, and you can see big jump over the last few years, steadily upward. Flattened out a little, but not bad. It's still growing. Matter of fact, we didn't break 100,000 jobs until like 2014 or 2015. So we're now up to 117,000, and he projects, again, the next 2 years, this will be the highest growing employment MSA in the state at 5.6%. You can see the projection in blue. That's what he thinks will happen. And that's based on a lot of these petrochemical jobs or projects, as well as some others. Gaming, aerospace, and others are important. That's a quick background, but the news is good. So if you have a continuing good economy, that allows us to have resources to provide what we need. The budget, as proposed, as every year, is balanced. That's for the existing revenues and any we have set aside previously for reserves to pay for long-term capital investments. And we have a lot of those, 130 million in this proposed budget. That is half of this proposed budget. Very fortunate to have that because this is investments for the future. with a moderate increase in operational spending. We're very aware to not try to go any higher than we have to on the expense side, because we have to honor that financial commitment. So what I'll do is go through the overall budget comparison, the big numbers. I'll break that down, a little more discussion on revenues, and then the expenditure side, and I'll break that down into operations and capital. Certainly, anytime you want to stop me, just let me know, and we'll try to answer any questions you may have. We always like to provide this graphic overall. It's called a stacked bar. If you look on the left, that's the current year budget, $244 million. Our proposed budget for 2020 is $258.5 million. That is an increase of, I think, $14.5 million, which is 5.9%. Very manageable. We put the color stacks in there so you can kind of see where the changes are, and I can get more specific on the next graph. This is the same information but in table form. So I'll just keep that up there for a minute and kind of go through it. The main two categories are operations and capital. On the left, you have the current year's budget, then 2020 is proposed, the difference dollars, and then the percent difference. You'll see at the top with operations, we are projecting a 4.9% increase. Again, very manageable. I'll go over that in a little more detail. Capital budget up $10 million, 10.7. Don't want to get it hung up in any one year on the time. It's all about timing with capital. If one road project, for example, gets pushed back or is ahead of the curve, it may hit in one year or another. I don't want to get too hung up on that. The key thing with capital in this, as you'll see, and there's your difference at the bottom, there's the 14.5 million increase. 10.7 million of that is from capital, meaning not too much from operations. Our debt service and other and grants are actually down. That means the capital increase you see there that accounts for 74% of the whole increase. That's a very positive thing, again, because these are future investments. All right, let's get a little more in the weeds. Talk about the revenue side first. We always like to use the pie chart here. Our two biggest revenue sources you have for the police jury, sales tax, property tax. You have two sales taxes, a 1 cent and a 1.5 cent. On ad valorem, of course, you have several different ones depending on the service. You'll notice, though, the largest wedge in this pie this time is prior year fund balance. Why is that? That's actually a good news thing. One of the things, just like at your home or a business, you have expenditures every year that you use, and then there's other money you put aside for future needs, whether it's repairs, renovations, new buildings, new roads. That's what that is. That means that financial stewardship, that is one of your values. We put money aside literally for years, but you eventually want to use those. So what you'll see, a couple of examples. In the infrastructure side on roads, Coach Williams Drive is one of the biggest projects we have. It's well underway. We think it'll be possibly completed by the end of next year or early 2021. Well, we're spending that money that we've put aside. The Juvenile Justice Project, which is ongoing, I'll show you a picture later. At the point where you're ready to spend that money, you want to have it in savings, but when you do that, it becomes part of the budget. So that's actually a good news story. But as far as the revenue sources, sales and property taxes are the biggies. You can see gaming at the bottom. That's been consistent many years. It's just right around 5% each year. And then you see a few other sources. So let's talk about the sales tax. I'm using the 1 cent sales tax here, but it trends very similar to the 1.5, so we just show you one for an example. This tells you that this is in millions on the left, and then we go back many years just to kind of show you the pattern. So pretty obvious to see 2017 was a peak year over the last decade for sales taxes. A couple of points here, though. You can see kind of where the sales taxes are very much related, proportionate to the economy. Especially in our case, we have industry and unincorporated areas. That's why it's gone up so much. And even though it's gone down in 2018, and we anticipate this year it's going to be lower, it's still strong. Next year, we're projecting it to be right about what it is now. It was under budget this year, but what Tammy has done, and we agree, Let's just keep it steady at what we are actually anticipating collecting. The good news, though, even though it's going down, take a look, even the lowest, the last 4 bars on this are all higher than earlier in the decade. So we've reached a level that's still higher, even though sales taxes are trending down a bit. And we do think if those LNG plants that are announced start, or the Lake Charles methanol, that will go back up. Okay, this is property tax on this one. And so we're clear, this graph is not the property tax revenues, it's the valuations, or what you might call the tax base. So if you take all of the assets in the parish, industrial, commercial, residential, utilities, that's what those numbers are on the left. So when you're looking at about $2.4 billion, if your friends, when you see them nice, oh, I see you're getting $2.4 billion, what are y'all doing? That's not taxes, that's the tax base. But here's the good news. The higher than usual increase we expect to get. This information comes from the tax assessor's office. We're not able to calculate it, so we get their information. And next year's revenues, that'll be from a 2019 tax levy, are anticipated to go up 9.6%. So anything you're seeing maybe on a downward on sales, it's not dollar for dollar, but this is a positive trend, and again, higher than average. So we're very pleased with that. By the way, when this happens, this allows your tax rates to stay or even go down for the public. That's because of economic growth. Very positive. I want to also throw in there gaming. Everybody's interested in how the gaming things work. What we would just call this is flat the last few years. Not bad, but not soaring. It's a little confusing to explain. And by the way, this is not just police jury. These are all public agencies. So you're looking at the 32, 33 million. That's us, the cities, the port, school board, all added together. The police jury's part of this is about 10 to 11 million. But we like to add them up for this graph. The casino, the gaming industry is strong, but it's kind of leveled. You know, there's a number of factors, but plus the timing of the payments. I wouldn't get too hung up. It looks like it's going up this year. It all depends when they pay the head tax, if you will. So we don't feel bad about gaming, but it's level. We do believe there will be a uptick after the 210 bridge project is complete. And although this isn't official, we work a lot, talk with the contractor. They may be finished by Christmas. We hope so. So the earlier the better, certainly for the casinos. Okay, that's all the revenue side. I know I'm going kind of quick, but if you have any questions, let me know. Kind of want to talk about the cost side. You good, Judd?
Okay, go.
Okay. Sorry, I'm going. Okay, this it's not identical, but when I was up here last year doing this, it's very similar looking pie chart. These are the categories of costs that you have at the police jury. We break it down. In public works, this includes operations, capital, that's your roads, bridges, drainage. This is your bread and butter. Public safety is a big category. General government covers a lot of our departments. You can kind of see the breakdown. The percentages are pretty close to what they were before. So no big changes there. Now the amount is up, but the breakdown is about the same. Let's take a look a little bit at operations. Going back to one of the first slides, reminder, our projection is 4.9% in the budget. That's what we've put in for 2020 for operations. What does that primarily consist of? The first one, let's take a look at compensation for employees. We are still in a very competitive market, as you know. Many of you have or work in your own private businesses. It's tough to get and keep people, and we got to continue to do that. The 5% increase in those total salary dollars are a combination of an adjustment of right at 2.5% for a cost of living type shift, especially for this area. That's a little larger than the nation as a whole, plus a step increase that most employees may get. We budget in that event. And then it also includes any new positions. So you add that up, it's about 5%. The bullet right under that, kind of shifting to those, okay, what are those positions? We are budgeting for 19 new positions in 2020. Some of these are just one additional person in a department. If you, the larger ones are broken down, and I'll show you on the graph. The water sewer has actually got to do with, under Public Works, Alan and his team oversee different water districts and sewer districts that we now operate on your behalf. So any increases there, and there are, I think, 2, they're actually paid for, we get reimbursed, if you will, through the district budgets. So technically, they're our employees, but they're getting paid for through another budget. Juvenile justice is adding some employees, I believe 4. Why is that? Big change in state law. Any 17-year-old now in the criminal justice system is considered a juvenile in terms of how that person's treated, not an adult, which means Bill Summers and his staff out there will be dealing with a lot different group of people. That it's a good thing, by the way. We feel very strongly that was a positive move by the state, but it shifts the handling of those, that age group down to the juvenile side, not the adult population. And a couple other things that go into that 4.9%, the employer's share of health insurance premiums. This does not increase one dime the employee's cost. This is the parish's part to make sure we can match those claims anticipated, and that's $25 per employee per month. That's a little higher. That's manageable, but it's a little higher. And then the retirement system, the employer portion that we've got to put up went up 3/4%. And by the way, the parochial retirement system, which we are part of, it's statewide, is an excellent system. It is fully funded. They have kept up with whatever costs are. They had good returns, and you can feel very good about being a part of that. And I want to thank Tammy, who was on the board for that system, as well as one of your colleagues, Sandy Trimmy, for many years. And they have been a great addition to that group. Let's go to capital projects now. We're moving off operations. This is the investments for the future. No surprise, roads and bridges. That's the biggie. Probably always will be. That means you're talking 1,100 to 1,200 miles of road in the unincorporated areas of the parish. Think about that a second. And most of those are paved. So they've got to be paved over. You got rights of way. You've got the road itself, any drainage issues. It takes a lot to keep that up. Tim and his staff do a great job with that. I'll give a few examples later, but I think Tim, he said we anticipate in 2020 overlaying 70 miles of roads and then some new roads, which I'll get to in a minute. Major facilities capital is in the red at the top. Those are what we call our bond projects. I'll go over those in a minute. Those are the biggies. We've got things outside of that, but you take those 2 categories and that's the bulk. We've got courthouse complex, that's down here, all of our buildings, got to keep those up. Parks is always a big deal. Some sewer money. Stormwater capital, that's drainage projects, and then other. So let's just give a few examples of the road and bridge part of that. These are just a few, but as far as the big ticket items, Coach Williams Drive, which is underway, going to be a great road. It's a long project, and again, I think I said earlier, we anticipate it could be completed by the end of 2020. If not, it'd be early 2021. By the way, these are all technically extensions, but we don't have space to put the word extension, so y'all know what I'm talking about. Johnny Bro Road in the Vinton area, going to be a major connector for that area of the parish, especially for the port, the Vinton port. It will allow a lot better road transportation connection there, and the police jury has also helped them with some sediment removal and from the drainage canal, and you've helped that area a great deal, and that's a biggie. Ham Reed Road, so many things going on there. This project, which of course Mr. Brame is rightly pushed us to start doing, that would be the westerly extension from where it terminates right now, Elliott. Excuse me, Mr. Land, do you have a question?
I do.
Okay.
When I see that, it makes me think, where are we, or where is this city on their drainage ordinances?
I pester them every day about that, and I hope any day now to get an, saying that they've got a meeting where they're gonna put that on the agenda. My goal, is, well, it's not my goal, it's my hope, that before this jury term is out, they will have passed something, because we've got a couple of things we know y'all want to put on your agenda that we feel like you will wanna do, but you also wanna see some better drainage ordinances. So I can answer you better, hopefully later next week.
And also in this budget, is the road and drainage trust fund still in there just as it has been?
Yes, sir. Matter of fact, we met with a group of jurors earlier, and we actually, that's in there, and then we added another 1.2 million for, in addition to what's in here, the 14 million that I show, that's got to do with, it would be capital project funds, Mr. Landry, but contingent upon them having decent drainage ordinances.
So it
And
is-
the projects have to be good
So
too.
we are gonna tie it together?
Yes.
I mean, otherwise, we would just be better off. Y'all-
Well, it's a
our
carrot, not a
staff
stick,
pick their
and
project, and we do our project
That's
wherever
right.
in the parish, and just stop doing it altogether.
you're correct. And of course, since drainage from all of these cities runs outside of cities, it affects us all. I want to thank Tim and his team and a lot of other staff trying to put together a plan. And we'll get into that more detail early next year, but
Okay,
the budget, to answer your question, there's money in the budget for that type of thing.
we're gonna just assume, of course, you have to budget for it, but we're gonna assume that somebody's gonna get on board.
Yes. We are very hopeful and optimistic for that. We don't probably talk about bridges enough. Our bridges typically are kind of small, but we've got a ton of them. I don't know how many, but every year, engineering does a lot of these. We think 7 will be completed in 2020, another 6 to start, and I may have gotten that number backwards. And then, of course, drainage. Certainly, if you have any questions about what makes up that 14 million, but between that and Road and Drainage Trust Fund, and there's a lot of money there to get a lot of good projects going or continuing. And I wish the one time I need Hal to be here, because he talks about Coach Williams all the time. He's not here, and you've got a picture of him. That's the groundbreaking from last year, was it? For Coach Williams extension. Oh, by
Don't
the
worry,
way,
when it's open, I'm gonna invite him.
okay.
I'm gonna go pick him up wherever he is, and I'm gonna bring him there.
Mr. Barris, the picture on the left is Bell Cove Road down off of 27. So the right-of-way looks a lot bigger than the road, but that's a good thing. So, okay, let's shift from the road side and drainage side. These are the major facilities that are part of our bond issue. Very quickly, the juvenile justice facility is already under construction, well underway. We think it'll be completed next summer. That's a picture from the site. It is a very big project, and we're excited about that. The next one, it's called the Forensic Center. I don't want to fool anybody. The picture on the bottom is the rendering. That is the coroner's office and crime lab. It will be built to be next to each other, and to the person looking at it, it will look as one big complex. Technically, they're just going to abut next to each other, but we've taken a hard look and said, let's name these things what they are. And Forensic Center is a better, more complete description of that. But don't worry, that's the coroner's office. I know y'all have been asking about that. That facility and the animal services next, very strong to start construction next year. Burton Coliseum is a renovation, but a big one. It's, if you think air conditioning costs at your house are a lot, and they can be, this is big. It's a whole new one, whole new system. So it's a big job, but that one, I don't have the exact time we estimate that'll be bid, but it's, obviously, that's one, if you don't get it right and it breaks, we're in trouble. So that's urgent. Last but certainly not least, what we call the Calcasieu Parish Judicial Complex. What is that? We've been calling it Family and Juvenile Court, but several months ago, and it's all been worked out, I feel very good about this. We are now putting the Clerk of Court's office in that building. And it's obviously changed the space, but the footprint's no different. A little different, but we want to name it what it really is. And it's much more than new family and juvenile court. It's much more than that. So that's what we're calling that one. Thought I'd throw a few park improvements up there where they're happening. We've got so many, I can't list them all. But all throughout the parish, we've got some improvements. Sometimes they're not all that big, but they're important. Other times, like at River Bluff in Moss Bluff, that's a big one. That's the pavilion phase. And one thing that's not on here, the bottom one, that's Intracoastal Park. I believe that's a rendering of what we want to do out there. Dean Kelly and his staff, we've been talking a lot. We're good at doing park master plans for a park. Say, what do you want to do and how do we phase it? What we haven't done, and we're going to start in 2020, I don't know if we're finished, is a process to do master planning for our park system. People use parks all over. How do they decide where to go? Are we meeting the needs? Where are we maybe better? Where we need to shore up? How do we compare to what cities have? And we're going to take a very good, deep look at that, and I'm very excited about that phase. Any questions on parks? I know we get a lot of that. Okay. Okay, last couple of slides here. Take the numbers aside for a minute, kind of look at where are we, kind of drop back, take the bird's eye view. I'm sorry. Yes, sir.
I'm sorry.
It's okay.
The more I thought about it, I decided I
go back
wanted to
up?
ask. River Bluff in Ward 1.
Yes.
What's the next step there? We're going to build a facility there?
It's a closed, nice
or what
pavilion.
have you?
And Dean, is it parking? Forgot, isn't there another part of that phase, or is that the main thing?
The main pavilion along with the walking path.
Walking path. That's in the same phase?
Yes.
Okay. Is that the one that's gonna go out over the water, or that's later?
Go out to the river's edge, yes.
Okay.
Is that the last, or will we be done, or no? Or there's still more?
Dean, you want to come on up to the mic?
Yeah.
Wonder if it'll be squishy. Wonder if it'll
Dean
be
Kelly, Director of
squishy.
Facilities. This next phase will include the pavilion and walking path that'll go on down to the river. That'll complete the development of the east side of that park. And then the next phase will develop the western half.
Okay, so after this, we'll be halfway
That'll be the
finished.
last phase.
And while you're up there, if you don't mind, just real quick, Israel LaFleur Park, just tell us what's going on out there. I know, but there's a lot of people that don't, and I'm getting a lot of questions about what you are doing out there.
The current project is encapsulating the southern half of that peninsula with a vinyl sheet pile wall. We're also including a wharf, a fishing wharf there on the south side. That vinyl sheet pile wall will go up underneath the bridge, and it will stop just before we get to the boat launch. And that's to mitigate against future loss of land there. We've had a lot of erosion over the years. We can't sustain that peninsula without taking this effort. So that's the extent of the current project.
Thank you, Dean.
Thank you, Dean.
Could not wait.
Okay, strategic plan implementation. The jury early this year in January approved a strategic plan, and it was based on 10 months of intense work throughout 2018 to get there. And that's important. I'll kind of cover that in a minute. So where we are, as I mentioned earlier, our economy is still strong. Fastest growing MSA, that's Calcasieu and Cameron area in Louisiana for 6 straight years. That is unbelievable. It really is. I mentioned this second wave of projects we see coming. But this is a benefit now. You're seeing the transition, and this is the bigger payoff, frankly. Construction jobs are great, but those, of course, come and go. But many more permanent jobs are already here and will continue to come. High-paying jobs. These manufacturing and other industries are higher paying than a lot of what you might call service jobs. That's all great news. But as a public entity, it also means our service demands are high. I got to thank Jessica for this graph. I love this graph. I said, Jessica, we need a graph that says service demands are high, and she literally found one. They're not extreme, they're not normal, but they're very high. Well, what do I mean by that? Well, in some cases, it's new things we need. We all know with the road system, it's not just us, cities, DOTD, the traffic, the congestion, the bottlenecks, it doesn't always mean you need a bunch of new roads. Sometimes intersection improvements, road extensions, all sorts of things, bridges. But that is, I don't have to explain what we mean by higher demands there. Watershed management, that's the drainage stuff. With every new development, every store, every home, every industrial plant, you take away this permeable, absorbed, this ground and replace it with something like concrete or roofs, you're taking away part of the watersheds. We are doing a lot of good things to mitigate that, but it is an ongoing challenge. Affordable housing, one example, I know Mr. Polite is here. It is very difficult now for the voucher system we have where we need landlords to provide apartments, housing for federal funds which come down, and we can help that low to moderate income group. Well, the demand is so high that we can't get landlords. They can get more money. So it's a constant struggle. And these are just a few examples. And then just within our operations, day-to-day things you don't think of, the volume is so much higher. Code enforcement, animal services, unbelievable. Because they're moving into all sorts of the parish, more people. Parks maintenance, Dean and his crew have a major goal next year to start doing more deep cleanings and more frequent cleanings at parks. I hate to say this, sometimes our people that use parks aren't always the neatest, and we need to upgrade that. Believe it or not, tree trimming. I had to throw this one in. You can ask Galen more questions if you want, but we're actually having to put a lot more money in that because think of areas that are normally remote. With technology and overnight delivery and Amazon's in the delivery business, UPS trucks, they're all bigger and they're out there all the time and there's more of them. So they're hitting more tree branches. You don't even think of these, okay, good economy, we better start tree trimming, but it's, I think, an additional maybe $1 million. Think about it, that was 1,100 miles of roads, and it's a public safety issue. It's no small thing, but on the whole, we're not saying this to complain, we're saying that is the environment we're in, and that's why this strategic plan is important. This is how you think ahead, you don't wait, you think about what's coming, you plan for what's coming, you react to things you can't anticipate. You have 6 priority service areas in this plan. Those are condensed into 3 sections or headings that are on that slide. We got to be efficient and effective with our day-to-day services all the time, constantly looking at processes. Our long-term infrastructure, not just for tomorrow, but 20 years from now, we got to be thinking ahead. I can tell you after many years now of hard work, we are maybe, I think, cross your fingers, breaking through with DOTD to do some of these Calcasieu transportation plan projects on state routes and intersections. DOT has been a bit of a bottleneck because of some of their policies, but we think we're very close to getting through that. And then last but not least, we talk a lot more about quality of life. That's parks, that's fighting litter, that's all, you know, walkways and paths in parks, all sorts of other things, cultural issues. We have started this plan this year after you approved it. I'm very proud to say through this year and through the end of this year, we project we will actually have achieved over 50 of those strategic plan goals for that year. We have already met as a parish-wide set of departments on planning 2020 goals. And this is important. I want to say this each year. This budget we're proposing, and this is important, it links directly to this strategic plan that you passed. That's the whole reason. When we ask the department to submit their budgets, we say, look at your goals, what resources do you need? The two should be tied together. So we literally link them together, and that's what they are. The two, you need both. The budget serves the plan. You can change the plan, you can modify the plan, and we want to make sure we budget those things accordingly. So with that, I think we're down to the next steps. This will be my last slide. This is the formal proposal, or excuse me, presentation of the budget. It is now public. I believe this evening, our communication and media team will have the whole document posted on the website for the public to view and comment on between now and mid-December. We have to do a public hearing on December 5th. So, Mr. Brame, your committee will reconvene for that, that day before the regular meeting. And then formal adoption of the budget is set for your last meeting of the year, December 19th. So, with that, I'll take any questions, and we have staff here too if you need them.
Thank you, Brian. We do have some questions. Mr. Antoine.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Not so much questions, Brian, but I would like to get on a soapbox for a couple of minutes and tell you that in the last 28 years that I've been here, every year the budget is increased by a certain amount, and now we're up to $258 million. I guess what I want to brag about is that due to having people on this staff who have vision to use the natural resources that we have in Calcasieu Parish is one of the reasons why we are where we are. We could just sit on them and not do anything, but I think the fact that we have all worked together over the years with other entities and try to utilize the resources that we have here, these things did just not happen. All these people who moved in here had a reason, because we have water, we got rail, we got interstate, we got some altitude you can land any aircraft that's been ever built or probably will ever be built. So I want to commend you and Dan and all your staff and Tammy for the hard work that y'all do. Y'all are unappreciated. You really are, because average Joe person does not realize how many hours you spend here. You don't go home at 4:30 every afternoon like a lot of people do. You stay here as long as you have to get the job done. And I think it's Calcasieu Parish is blessed to have the staff that you have. And that's not by accident either. Years ago when I was working for a company, my big boss told me, he said, the mark of a good administrator is the one who has the ability to surround himself with people who know what they're doing. I never forgot that, and I think that applies here. Mark, when he was here, and now you, and I want to commend you and Dan, and again, I don't sound redundant, but serving on the Louisiana State Executive Board, I can tell you that Calcasieu Parish is the envy of the state. Most of these parishes don't have enough road to gravel their roads or limestone their roads, much less hard surface them. So I think the people in Calcasieu Parish ought to be and should realize that they are fortunate to live here. I mean, we have industry is probably the lifeblood of the parish, but spending your money wisely, like y'all have budgeted, I think is definitely a accolades go to y'all.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And
I mean that sincerely. I think you know me well enough.
Greatly
I wouldn't say that
appreciated.
if I didn't mean it. With that, I'll yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Antoine. I absolutely 100% agree with you, and thank y'all for everything. Go ahead, Mr. Barris.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. When you mentioned the potential collaboration with DOTD, that my ears perk up on that, because our Public Works Department is they're killing themselves fighting the drainage issues, fixing the drainage issues. But at the end of the day, and I've said this time and time again, at the end of the day, a lot of our ditches point at state route ditches. We are not utilizing a ton of capacity. It's just sitting there. I mean, duck hunters wish they had cattails like that. I mean, I'm telling you. I mean, that's great, hunting blind areas. But it's just, and that's not just in Corliss. That's everywhere, all over the parish. A lot of ditch just sitting there, and I really would like to see a collaboration of that type in the future. And we'll figure out what part we play and how much of that, but just start somewhere. Let's try a small one and see how the workflow. Obviously, we're going to have to see how the workflow goes.
Sure.
But we'll fine tune it as we go to tackle the bigger road stretches and such. I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Barris. Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, if you don't mind, I'd like to address your point. It's a good one. We are hopeful, and we're going to have to push for it, but I think you're aware, many of you are aware, over the last year, there's been this Louisiana Watershed Initiative. The state is leading it, and there's a lot of big picture, big money reasons for that, but they're trying to build a structure for many things besides just how do you spend federal monies that come down for drainage projects. And good ordinances, watershed protection procedures. We're using that opportunity and will to push and say, push your own agencies, in this case DOTD primarily, to do their part. If you can just take care of your own business better, don't leave that out. It's maintenance, but that's very important. And you, unfortunately for y'all, you're going to get those calls more than some office that they don't even know who does it, because you're an elected official here locally. So I think with y'all's leadership and us pushing back, we're going to send that message, because I'll speak for Alan. We can't, as good as we feel like we can handle things for our roads, we just don't have the capacity to do all the drainage along state routes. It's just too much. But we aren't going to just sit back either. So I just want you to know we will push that.
Thank you. I think in my 4 years on the jury, the route 1256-27 route at best was spot mode, and it happened right around the time this guy came down. Donald Trump happened to be coming through there, and they were cut that morning. It's pretty interesting. But anyway, thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Vaughn, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I too want to commend staff. Every year, I've been here for 12 years, and every year, if you look back historically at the budget, it's grown very, very incrementally, 5-ish% each year. And but if you look back at the capital projects that have been done, it's grown at a greater pace than that. So operationally, we've kept pace with the cost of living, but we've reinvested back into the parish with this economic boom that we've had, with the amount of capital projects that we're doing. It seems like just a few years ago, that number was half of what it is today. Right. And so it's a reinvestment in our parish for the growth that we've been through. And my hat's off to you guys for really, really watching that and keeping pace with what we have to do around here.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Farnham. Mr. Landry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Back on the subject of Mr. Barris that he brought up, I know Mr. Connor they met with the state on these infrastructure projects that, I don't know, what are there, 5 of them or 7 of them that
Yes.
we kind of did the deal on. I guess we're really paying for them even though they're on a state route. And
That's the plan, correct.
They worked all that out, because I know at first that had never happened before, and they didn't even know how to allow us to do that. But you worked through it somehow. So if he could do that, we ought to be able to do the same thing on some of these drainage situations. And I'm not saying all of them, but I know of 3 or 4 of them in South Lake Charles where you may have a half of a mile at most of a state route that ditch hadn't been cleaned, the culverts haven't been flushed or anything in years. And so we go into the neighborhoods and we do all we can do, and really, it doesn't do any good because the water can't get out. And so I know more than one time I've said, why can't we just go clean it? Let's just go do it. Oh, you can't do that. That's against the law because it doesn't belong to us. We have got to be able to work out some kind of deal. If we can do that on a road project, we ought to be able to do it on that to where they would give us permission. And look, I'm not saying, and I know we don't have the funds to take over their entire responsibility throughout the whole parish, but you run into those situations where when that doesn't get done, it's affecting hundreds of homes. And they're not calling the state rep, they're calling us. And the bad thing is we can't do anything about it. We call, they make a work order. I guarantee you, I got work orders that are 3 or 4 years old that I called in. They've never done the work. And look, I don't know what's going on over there. I'm sure it isn't because they don't want to do it. You know, they're short-handed, they don't have the money, you know, but whatever, if we're in the position to be able to do that and help those people, I think we need to find a way to make that happen.
We will continue to look, and I realize we can't get into all that today, but I think you hit on a critical point. When something like overgrowth in a ditch affects overall drainage to other areas, it then isn't just, okay, that's on a state route. I'm more optimistic we might try to figure out how to legally fund some things and say, y'all have to do more, here's some money to help. I was talking more about our just literal physical ability to try to get to all those, but I'm more optimistic monetarily we can figure that out to where they improve it. But either way, Mr. Landry, you're right, we aren't backing off. We are gonna pursue that vigorously.
You are way more optimistic than I am, I can tell you.
Well, I'm saying that because I want to find a legal way to do the funding, but
I want to find a legal way, let's just do it. And just have their blessing and get them out of it altogether. Let's go out there and we can get it done and it'll be over with. And the less involvement that we have, the better off you're gonna be. And we can go out there and get it done. Now, I'm not saying without them knowing, obviously they're gonna have to give their blessing.
Right.
But there's a way. If Tim got them to do it on those road projects, and this isn't something that's gonna happen every week or every month. I mean, come on, Tim, why don't just put it off on him, let him do it. He ought to be able to do it.
No pressure.
his beard wasn't gray before you said that. So. I promise we will talk with y'all and we will continue to pursue all this.
Good?
I'm good, thank you.
Okay. Any other discussion? Can I get a motion to receive report?
You got
So
it.
moved.
Second.
Thank you.
Motion, okay. Motion by Mr. Anderson, Potts, second by Mr. Landry. Is there any other discussion?
Move to adjourn.
Any objection? Hearing none, motion carries. We have a motion to adjourn. Have a second?
Second.
We are adjourned.